And speaking of Bright Eyes, and speaking of Conor Oberst, who is the mastermind behind all sorts of things, we're going to try to get in as much as we possibly can with him today. Is Conor Oberst on the phone? Hello, Conor.
Hello. Hello.
I am so happy to have you on the phone because you are one of my favorite artists, and just your ambition and how you took independent marketing and self-promotion in a good way is an amazing thing to me.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Let's start. Do me a favor. Let's start. You have a new album that's coming out called The People's Key.
Yes, sir.
And a Bright Eyes album, and it's your 7th album, right?
Something like that, yeah. But I've lost count a little bit, but I think that sounds right.
I know it's got to be hard because you have you also have the Conor Oberst and the Mystic Valley albums. You have Monsters of Folk.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this album, The People's Key, I love how it starts off with Firewall. Let's get into that a little bit. The Firewall starts with basically a monologue. I guess, for lack of a better word, monologue about all sorts of extraterrestrial. I don't want to say New Age, but it's extraterrestrial, sort of like science or science fiction oriented proposed history of what happened on Earth. Can you tell me what was going on with that, the merging of that, and plus when you go into the song, how did you design all of that?
Well, the recording is a friend of mine, this guy named Denny Brewer, who I met down in El Paso, Texas. I made the Valley Band made a record down there at a place called Sonic Ranch, a great studio, and through the owners and friends we met down there, we met this fella, Denny, and actually you should check it out. Him and his son have a great band called Refried Ice Cream that's kind of like garage, psych, West Texas, strange, incredible music, and
nice.
He's just a really fascinating guy, probably in his mid-60s and has lived just this pretty crazy, off-the-grid kind of life. And I realized as I was writing the songs that, like, some of these ideas that he had, or that were coming through in the song, some of these themes were things that I had heard him talk about, or things we had, discussed in conversations we had when I was down there. And so we kind of have this tradition of starting each record with some kind of awkward intro. And so it's like, good luck. So I decided to give him a call and see if he would, consider recording just some dialogue. And he was gracious enough to oblige us. And then he sent about, an hour or so of conversation between him and his son and this other friend of ours, Tony. And then we kind of gave us free rein to sort of edit it, and then obviously added the musical accompaniment, and it just seemed like a nice way to set the tone for the rest of the album. Yeah, and it does. The rest of the album, this album as a whole, The People's Key, I listened to I don't know if you'd call it the title track, I guess. It would be a machine spiritual in The People's Key. Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's a little rough. Understand that as much as I have my own interpretations of what's going on in these songs, and I've been a fan of yours forever. For instance, when you said the randomness of your openings on a lot of these albums, my favorite one, I'll just throw out there right now, is from I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning with the At the Bottom of Everything. Yeah. Oh, my God. That is so great. Actually, we should play that, but we need to play that. Okay, cool. Album, and I like to voice my own opinion most of the time, but I would love you to talk about the perspectives that you were coming from with some of these songs. For instance, that I guess we would say title track. What is the germ concept on that? Well, the People's Key, depending on who you talk to, is the key of C. Well, on a piano, it would be considered the key of C because that's the one where you can hit all the white keys and you won't hit a bad note as far as like playing in the key, and so it's a very easy key to play in. On a guitar, people say it's the key of E for the same kind of reason, but basically, when you look at a lot of Eastern religions, there may be a little less importance on the body, although they look at the machine as a body in terms of asanas and keeping it fit and keeping it sound, but it's all about a consciousness evolution, about getting to the point where everything is one thing and accessing
siddhis and all sorts of things that are existent on a really, on the much subtler, supposedly subtler level of existence.
For sure. I mean, when you think about like the concept of like reincarnation, it's essentially just uploading yourself and your spirit or your essence into like a new form, a new hard drive, as it were.
Beautiful. I haven't heard it said like that. That's really wonderful. When did you, Conor? Have you always had your eye on evolution? I guess we'll call this, for lack of a better term.
Well, I mean, I guess I've always been slightly preoccupied with like death or just whatever, those kind of silly big questions that like people will tell you not to spend your time worrying about. But I don't know. I guess it's more just like kind of trying to enlighten myself as much as I can, or just know all these perspectives that are out there, or these possible meanings to things, and that has always been a fascination of mine. And I think it's really interesting how so many things, whether it's religion or science or just the general quest for like understanding the human condition, how many things kind of lead back to the same place,
Yeah. What do you think when you look at maybe when you look at religion and you see how I know you're not supposed to talk about religion and politics, and I'm actually going to bring up both. But when you look at religion and it seems like there is maybe a it's going to sound derogatory by saying it like this, but I can't come up with another way of saying it that's better. There seems to be more of a tunnel vision or narrow-mindedness when it comes to their concept, like individual religions as organizations, I guess you'll call it, when they look at spirituality, when they look at evolution, when they look at consciousness. Do you find that that's the case when you look at religions, or do you find that they really are all kind of striving with the same thing? They're just not speaking the same language, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think both those things can be true, depending on the situation. I don't pretend to be an expert on all the various religions, but, I mean, there's a reason I don't belong to any of them. It's because I think that you're correct in the sense of they, especially, in our current sort of very volatile world, they're used to divide people more than anything, and to control people. And the beauty of them, and I think maybe their original intention, is often lost in a more political or economic game, which the people are participating in, whether they know it or not, and I guess that's the shame in it. And it's just, it blows my mind, that like people will murder each other over like these really like insignificant details, as far as like think about, Protestant and Catholics, or, Shiite and Sunni. It's like they're basically the same thing, but like they, one whatever goes, eats with their left hand, one eats with their right hand, or whatever. It's like there's nothing that different about them, and yeah. It's just shocking to me that so much suffering in the world is caused by those organizations, which is a good term for them, because I think
there you go.
The essence has been lost, I guess.
Yeah, very very well said, Conor. Yeah, and then I can't help thinking of the Star Trek episode with Frank Gorshin with the black and white faces, black and white body sides.
I don't know if I saw that one. It's like, oh no.
There were two races on this one planet. One had a black side and on the right, and one had white on the left, and the other race had black on the left and white on the right, and they were at war with each other with an impossible way to resolve things, right to the bitter end. It actually was one of those episodes that was a little sad, because at the end of the episode, Captain Kirk, the crew, decide, well, there's no resolving this, and they basically give up. Although the statement was made in the episode, it isn't that I personally don't believe that you have to that one should give up on all of this. But on the other hand, it just seems that the strangest, pettiest things are at the bottom of some of the biggest divisions among races, religions, people.
Totally. I think that's very true, and yeah, totally sad. But I'm with you. I don't think we should give up. I think the trick is to like show people and like tell people to see themselves in each other and realize that all those divisions are really illusions, and that we really are all in this together, and kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's wishful thinking, I guess, but
No, I hear you.
I think you gotta strive for that.
Yeah. Do you have looking back at you? Let's get back to the album for a second. The people. There's so much to talk about. It may be only a second. No, I'm kidding. The People's Key. Can you tell me what the process was as far as how you guys recorded this Bright Eyes album?
Sure. Well, we started in January of this year, and we mastered like a couple days before Thanksgiving, so roughly like a 9-month period, but with many breaks in that time. Like we would go in and do a session for a couple weeks, and then it might be a month or a month and a half till we got back together again. And so it actually worked out good because it gave a lot of time to think about the songs, and to a lot of the songs had different forms along the way, and we would go back and revise and really took our time with it. And we built towards the end of our last record, Casadega, we completed a new studio in Omaha, in Mike Mogus's, basically in his house, and it's a really fantastic place to record. And this was the first time that we got a chance to make a record there, start to finish, and kind of the best of both worlds, where you feel as comfortable, you're at home essentially, but the place itself is very hi-fi as far as the studio.
That's so cool. And right, and then that is conducive to being more creative, I imagine.
Yeah, just kind of on no one's schedule but our own, and being able to kind of work at our own pace. And if something wasn't coming out how we wanted it, we just go back and do it again, or try something else. And that's a freedom that not very many bands have, who are kind of stuck in a studio for a certain amount of time, or working on a producer's clock or anything like that. So I feel lucky to have that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, and relationships. I imagine some of those relationships allow you to be very creative with each other.
Yeah. I mean, Mike and I have been making records together for 12 years now, and then Nate with us for about the last 5-6 years, and so yeah, we know each other really well, and I think we've come to trust each other's instincts. And I know, speaking for myself, I'm much more open to reimagining a song, even if I kind of thought we were on a good track or something. Or
yeah,
I guess I've learned to not hold on so tightly to my own little visions of what it should be like, because a lot of times I'm wrong, and one of the other people has a better idea, and so that's something that I've learned.
Very nice, very nice. Do you have, when you do the Conor Oberst and the Mystic Valley albums, do you have a different approach with that, or is it basically the same thing, maybe with a little more emphasis on Conor Oberst?
No, it's actually polar opposite as far as the approach with the Mystic Valley band, because where Bright Eyes is very much a studio project, and I'll show them the demos, and then we sit around and discuss how to arrange it, and we build the songs, kind of bottom up, track by track, and it's a very, I don't know, it's just cerebral, and what you hear at the end is a summation of all three of Nate, Mike, and all three of our ideas combined. Whereas with the Valley band, it's just I start playing the song in the room with the guys, and everyone knows what instrument they're going to play, and everyone kind of has their general style, and it's much more instantaneous and visceral, and it's a live band basically. And both ways have their merits for sure.
Yeah,
and that's why it's nice to be able to change it up.
And what was the dynamic for for Monsters of Folk, which, by the way, when I was in California, I'm in the Midwest right now. I'm a neighbor in Iowa, in Fairfield, Iowa. But in California, I mean, seriously, the Monsters of Folk, as far as a lot of the people that I knew, that was one of the albums of that year. What was the?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. What was the?
You're in Fairfield, like with the TM joint and all that.
The TM joint is right down the road. Yeah, we're a radio station that's up the road from them. We're solar powered. We're the only Midwestern solar powered station apparently, and
cool.
We're trying to be.
I've never made it out there, but I've always wanted to come check out the school and or the center or whatever.
Yeah. No, well, the thing is, no one has to fear about it of indoctrination. It's not that type of thing. It's how many people have learned TM over the years and actually practice it, and you never really hear about it. It's just It's just a technique for meditation. So.
Yeah. Jim James actually did that recently, and he, like, speaking of Monsters of Folk, and he was definitely saying it was something that has helped him and encouraged me to try it. So
if you ever do want to, actually, we'll say it like this: if you ever do want to get hooked up, we'll hook you up. But let's get back to what we're talking about here, as far as your Monsters of Folk has another kind of dynamic to it. How did that originate? How did that come into being?
Well, that started, we did a tour back in 2004 and just, played on each other's records and became friends over the years, and always sort of talked about, wouldn't it be great to make a whole record together, and then finally it did kind of happen. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's a kind of a combination of both, because we did, when we were writing the songs and kind of getting inside each other's heads a little bit, we would just sit around with guitars and play songs and talk about chord changes and, that sort of thing. And then, once we started recording, we really wanted to, our big rule was like, just be the only four people that play on the record. That's not like getting hired guns. No, like,
right.
If we're gonna have drums, like, one of us has to play the drums. And so it was kind of nice to go back to that stage where you're like uncomfortable on an instrument and
nice.
Like, kind of felt like we were like in high school or something, like just trying things and experimenting. And those M. Ward and Jim are like two of the people I admire most in like the musical world, and so to get like a ringside seat to kind of like see them in action, like making a record and the things they find important and the way they approach arranging and recording it was really fantastic. And I think I am better because of it. I learned things I can kind of take with me onto new records.
Yeah, and Jim James, of course, being from My Morning Jacket. How did you guys all meet? I mean, over the years, I guess everybody runs into each other on the road anyway, right?
Yeah. I mean, definitely ran in the same circles. I mean, I met M like earlier. We met probably in 2001, I guess, and I was a fan of his music, and he ended up opening for us like on the Lifted tour, and then we just became friends ever since, and have collaborated on different albums. And and then Jim, same kind of thing. Like, I admired what he did, loved the Jacket, and then kind of ran into him through mutual friends along the way somewhere, and just kept in contact. And there's a lot of people you meet who you love their music and they're nice and whatever, but there's no chemistry or there's no inclination to like, I want to get to know this person better, I want to play music with this person. I think that's at least in my experience, that's somewhat a rare thing where I have that feeling about someone, and then of course like where it's like reciprocated. And so it's just a really nice stroke of luck, I think, that we all became such good friends. And I mean, really, even apart from their music, they're lovely people, and like just a real joy to be around. So it's great.
Nice. Now, another thing I wanted to bring out, because it's very important. We know so many artists that are trying to that are starting out right now, and And you found the key with Saddle Creek Records and I guess Team Love, but I don't know how to get into that conversation. But with Saddle Creek, you forged a lot of ground there, and it was in a real DIY approach. I mean, I remember seeing you everywhere, how did you? I don't even know what the question here is. It's like congratulations for doing something like that, and also on the other hand, how do you do something like that? How did you do something like that?
Well, I mean, I think it was like, for us, like a perfect storm, kind of just of good fortune where, there was a group of friends. There was a little scene, not much of a scene in Omaha, but enough to where there was a cool record shop and there was some cool local bands that we liked to go see and kind of like bonded over. And then there was, this circle of friends that had, 3, 4, 5 songwriters in it that were all encouraging each other, and bands were forming and members sharing members and just like making these records. And then we also had the good fortune of someone like the Mogus brothers being there who could make somewhat decent recordings, and so we had that going for it. And then other friends like Rob Nansel, who's now owns the label, runs the label, and he was just very organized and could see could deal with the business side of it in a way that was like really smart and used the best of like the resources we had, which were not many, but and it also was, I think it was a different time,
yeah.
The internet was just kind of coming, so it was actually advantageous to us at that point, because it was like a way to communicate and get our word out there. And then also just the bands had a really strong work ethic, I think, and really we spent years in bands.
Yeah, the synergy and the energy, you could just feel it on all those records, and they're all it's just everything that was released on that label had a real quality to it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean it was fortunate. I mean, I think also the fact that people bought CDs back then helped too. It made it like actually possible for us to focus on music and not have to always have jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah. When you let's fast forward now to these days again, back to the album. We're talking, by the way, with Conor Oberst of Bright Eyes, the band's with a new album called The People's Key. And we're very lucky to have Conor on the phone with us here in Fairfield, Iowa, and he's a bit of a neighbor from Omaha, from next door.
Yep, that's right.
And by the way, if you do ever make it here, we have a couple of places we want to take you to, which is Cafe Paradiso, where we have all the local young artists, basically perform there, and a lot of the even the older artists. This town is so interesting in that you can throw a stone and hit an artist or a singer-songwriter or a musician. It's that packed with musicians here. It's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
gotta check it out.
Yeah, at some point. But with the new album, you have my favorite song from the new album. Forgive me, I'm a sucker for pop. I'll put it like that. But I love Janine Stars.
Mm-hmm.
I love that song. And were you aiming? I mean, almost more than any of the other songs on the album. It seems to have been influenced by 60s, 70s, 80s pop. What are your influences? Like what comes into your world when you're creating, when you're writing?
I mean, I'm a real music fan, and so I listen to all kinds of music all the time. Obviously, I listen to a lot of what my friends or people I know, music that's given to me. Always checking out, it's either through the labels or whatever, trying to check out new bands. And I don't know, it's hard to pinpoint like a specific. I guess what you hear is some swirl of everything that's kind of living in my at the bottom of my brain, and yeah, it kind of comes from different times and different styles of music.
Were you influenced? Apparently, I mean, I've read that you were influenced by folks like Elliott Smith and maybe Neil Young and folks like that.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, definitely. Singer-songwriter, lyrical-driven music is has been something I've always kind of been drawn to, people that put words together really well. Yeah, I mean, all kinds of music.
Nice. Yeah, and also topical music, it seems, because the way that you bandy about the lyrics are are really wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess like I said, I tend to focus on the lyrics when I'm listening to music, and not that they all have to be super heavy or super like complex or anything, but I like when words conjure up images in my mind and make me think.
Yeah.
I guess that's really the kind of the litmus test for me. If it's getting me to think of things in a new way, then and that's nice, and to be able to relate, sometimes to be able to relate to it, at least the emotion behind it or something is nice too.
Yeah, you have, and also you've been. I've read interviews where you definitely have opinions about what's going on in the world out there. Speaking of thinking, thinking. For instance, PETA. You're a supporter of PETA, right?
I definitely believe in animal rights. Cruelty to animals is horrible in all forms.
Right.
I don't really have any ties to that organization anymore. They, I think we let them hand out some T-shirts at some of our shows like 10 years ago, but that was kind of it.
Okay. Well, what's going on in the news right now, or even recently, like the elections, whatever? What's on your minds with like in politics?
Hey, I mean, I don't know. It's all intense, I'm sadly I've been getting more and more cynical with like the political process. I think until we really like see the money power structure behind our politics and like address that problem, I don't think we can expect anything to be solved. Basically like to somehow de-corporatize our government is like what we really need to do, or else our policies are always going to serve rich people and corporations, and so I don't know how you begin to do that because it's so entrenched, but I think, sadly the candidates don't really matter until that grip is loosened, that grip of money,
Although here in Iowa, I mean, what did we do? We voted out all of the, we punished the Democrats. We got rid of all the judges that passed, that approved gay marriage. So, on the other hand, I'm with you as far as I think it's one big pot of a lot of corruption. But on the other hand, it's almost like you have to get to the voting booth because otherwise, it's almost like you have to keep the other party out in order to like protect at least some basic interests.
Right. Yeah. There is certainly a lesser of two evils.
What is your advice for new artists?
My advice is to just keep doing it, regardless of what happens or regardless of the reaction. Just if you love it, you should do it because you love it, and that's the only reason you should do it. And get out and play. Don't count on whatever, my book or Face Me or whatever to get your music to people. Go actually play music in rooms with real human beings watching you, I think is important.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for visiting us here at Solar Powered Crew FM, Conor.
Thanks for having me.